Hey up everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Write Good Poetry. This week we're going to be looking at the Bristol-based poet Vanessa Kisuule. Now Vanessa has won multiple slam championships and she's just such a powerful writer and performer, and every time I've seen her she's kind of like just completely blown me away. Now the great thing about Vanessa's work is she covers such like a wide range of topics with her work. So she writes like really uplifting stuff about going on nights out and sex and what it is to be a woman, but she can also write quite serious and political things as well. So she's got a really nice kind of wide variety with what she chooses to write about, and that's what I like about her, the fact that she can go from being so like, I need to talk about this thing, I wanted to explore this topic, to then, bringing a bit of like relief into the room and writing about joyous things and celebrating things also. So she's got just a really, really nice wide variety of work. Now I'm going to be reading from this book today. This is Vanessa's second collection. It's called A Recipe for Sorcery. And what's really nice about this book is that it's kind of like split into different recipes, metaphorical recipes I should say. So when you're looking into the book, you've got like different sections, and a recipe for sustenance, a recipe for retaliation, a recipe for retreat, a recipe for absorption, a recipe for release, and there's just always really great poems that have been put into these different sections. So the poem I'm going to read today is a poem called Whore. The first time I saw Vanessa read this poem, I went away and I thought about it for a really long time. And it's it's a poem that I still think about quite a lot. So I really wanted to be able to talk about it. I'm going to read the introduction that comes with this poem as well, which kind of explains the poem a little bit more before I read the actual poem. So this is the introduction. Martin Luther King Jr. is a man known for his peaceful activism during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and most notably his I Have a Dream speech. Coretta Scott King was his wife, with whom he had 4 children before his untimely murder in 1968. It is a lesser known fact that Martin Luther King had multiple extramarital affairs, evidence of which was recorded by the FBI through hotel room bugs in an attempt to tarnish his reputation. The moral implications of this are, in this particular instance, irrelevant. Very few women have had the chance to tell their version of history. This is a poem from the perspective of one of Martin Luther King's mistresses. And this is the poem. Vanessa normally does this in an American accent, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to read it as me. He didn't speak much, that majestic man that led a nation with his words. His gaze was mute, those big old hands clumsy. So I undressed myself. A congregation of one, God help me. I worshipped him. He'd blaspheme his way to climax, then turn his back to me, bereft and gasping. I knew better than to touch or look at him. No, I'd just lay there, silent as sin, feeling the wall's ears perk up. Part of me was glad that someone, somewhere, bore witness. He didn't like any talk of the movement. That all got hushed up, brushed off like whining mosquitoes. He liked to reminisce, and I liked to listen. He sure knew his way round a story. Man could make me laugh till I choked. He'd hold me close and tell me all about his childhood days. He wanted to play dice with the big boys, but he was never allowed. See? Those cats played for money. That was gambling, and gambling was a heathen sport. So he learnt to amuse himself any old hour. He loved to run most of all, playing hide and seek with himself, damn near quickest feet on the block. Could never outrun the lick of Daddy's switch though. In summer, he'd lick the smoky sauce from his fingers on cookout days. His grandma would sneak him extra wings in greasy napkins. He'd hold him in his hot hands, rushed to his room to eat him up, real fast before his mumma caught him. That's me, a shameful greasy thing he steals artless mouthfuls of in tiny hotel rooms with cheap sheets that bring me out in a mean old rash. Could have said all this, but I didn't. I'd just stroke his head, tell him I make a mean gumbo, that one day he should try it. We both knew that day weren't coming any time this side of never. There's a word folks used to use for women like me. It swallows everything in its bottomless mouth. His memory will live in glory as it ought to. But I'll be some dirty nameless thing, recorded moans in a secret database. Evidence he was just a regular old man, and I a regular old whore. So be it then. They don't know how he came to me in tears and I was the only one who could put him back together to fight another day. So in some small and godless way, I was the one who set you all free. I love that poem so much. So let's pick it apart a little bit more. So obviously, as we've heard from the introduction, this poem is written from the point of view of a woman who Martin Luther King was having an affair with. It's written almost like a monologue, you know. It's her using her own voice to kind of tell her story. So as we know from historical texts, a lot of people's stories tend to get left out and only certain versions of history are normally able to be told. So this is really important, firstly, to give us another side of history and give us another viewpoint. And I really like how this has been done, because it could have been done as, you know, Vanessa could have just told us about this woman and what her life was like, but she didn't. She chose to write from her voice, to write from her point of view, and to give her a voice, you know. And she wrote about her in a very non-judgmental way, which is really important, because we forget that people are so easy to make judgments on other people that we forget that the people we're making judgments on are also other humans just, you know, trying to live their life. The title whore really contrasts the poem itself, I think, because, you know, and I think again this goes from this viewpoint, whore is like one word, it conjures up certain meanings in our minds. It's something that people often use as an insult, to insult a woman who is seen as, you know, promiscuous or whatnot, or sleeping about, or whatever you want to call it. But actually then when we read the text of what how people would see this whore, or what this person is meant to be like, she's just a person, you know, trying to live her life and trying to support this guy in the best way that she can. And I think that's the whole point of this poem. It says, you know, she says, his memory will live on in glory as it ought to, but I'll be some dirty nameless thing, recorded moans in a secret database. Evidence he was just a regular old man and I a regular old whore. And this poem is allowing her to tell her truth and to be able to show her point of view and her perspective and be like, look, if you listen to that, that's the idea that you'd have of me, but you actually don't know anything about me. And this, you know, gives her that voice. It also shows like another side of Martin Luther King. When we think about him, we think of him as this big, powerful speaker that, you know, did a lot of changes for the civil rights movement, but we don't, I don't know, I suppose a lot of people don't consider his childhood or his feelings or how difficult that might have been for him to do. And I think the fact that she gets to, you know, see these glimpses of his life that other people don't get to see. So she, you know, she gets to hear about what it was like growing up for him and things that are just outside of the movement, basically, that people might not take the time to learn or want to know about. So I find that another really interesting element of this poem. And then also you've got some really great use of metaphor in this. So when she's talking about how his grandma would sneak him like extra chicken wings and then, you know, comparing herself to a chicken wing, like the fact that she has got to be something that's consumed quickly and hidden away, and something that's not known about, but something that he like really wants. I think that's a really, really nice use of metaphor. And there's also the use of alliteration, silent as sin. I knew better than to touch or look at him. No, I just lay there silent as sin. Like, she knows that, you know, while they have this really close connection, they've also got that distance between them. There's some things that she can't ask about. There's some things that they can't talk about. The connection that they have is very much in that moment. And I just like that phrase. It's so small, but it just kind of summarises things so perfectly. And obviously she is seen as a sin by the church and all that sort of jazz anyway. So yeah, I really like this a lot. It's a really, really good idea, and I just think it really stuck with me when I heard it, because I just think it's so important to hear like alternative voices from history than the ones that were always presented. And I think the main theme that kind of runs through this poem is judgment and acceptance, and basically how we kind of judge other people, that we only have a little idea of what their life is like. Like, we don't actually know what their entire life is like or who they are, but we see like a little window of them and we make a quick judgment. And I think this really breaks down those ideas, and you know, as well as showing us alternative views of history, allows us just to rethink a little bit the way that we approach people. So yes, I would definitely recommend getting a copy of this book. Definitely recommend checking out more of Vanessa's work. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a subscribe to this channel, and catch me same time next week for some more poetry goodness. Have a good one.